Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session on motivational interviewing with adolescents. My name is Peter Reeves, and I know that you've heard a little bit of my background, but just to expound upon that a little bit, um, I am a social worker and currently a therapist in private practice, as well as a trainer and a member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, an international organization dedicated to the fidelity and excellence in teaching motivational interviewing. And prior to my current roles, I just wanted to share that I spent about 2 decades working in the North Carolina public mental health, substance use, and intellectual and developmental disability systems in lots of different roles. And in those roles, I found motivational interviewing to be an incredibly helpful tool, not only to make me more effective and efficient in doing my work, but also to increase my satisfaction with my work and to reduce my burnout. And so I'm really excited to be here to share this skill set with you in hopes that it will lend similar benefits for you and for your clients. So today, what I'm hoping to do in this brief amount of time, I simply don't have enough time today to teach you how to do motivational interviewing in a way that's going to result in you really being able to translate this practice into your work and benefit your clients. Instead, what I'm hoping to do is plant some seeds and to help you understand the core components of motivational interviewing, where it comes from, why it might be something that you want to learn more about. And then if you do, how you might go about learning more and really increasing your skill set and your ability to practice. So let's start at the beginning with the definition of motivational interviewing and some of the related concepts to really sort of create a foundation for our understanding. In the current edition of the Motivational Interviewing text written by Bill Miller and Stephen Rolnick and published in 2023, that's the 4th edition, the official definition of motivational interviewing is that motivational interviewing is a particular way of talking with people about change and growth to strengthen their own motivation and commitment. So this definition has a few things. One is just notice that what motivational interviewing is not necessarily a style of therapy. It's a style of communication. It's a way of listening, a way of talking. And it's really focused on developing people's motivation to make changes, to grow. In investing in increasing their commitment to wanting to do that work. Because at the end of the day, it's your clients who need to do the work to make changes. We can't do it for them, no matter how much we would like to. Another way I like to describe motivational interviewing is with 3 parts. One is it's a way of being with someone. It's a way of connecting with your clients. To do what? To support them in navigating growth and behavior change. And the way we do that is by allowing them to make the argument for what do they want to change, why do they want to make that change, and how do they want to make that change. And by listening to them in specific types of ways, we can encourage our clients to be the ones who are convincing themselves of what they want and how they want to get there and why they want to make that change. But at the end of the day, what motivational interviewing is the science of being a helpful helper. So science is a key word, and there has been a ton of research around motivational interviewing demonstrating its efficacy in lots of different settings and with lots of different populations. In fact, it is one of the most evidence-based behavioral health interventions that we have, with over 2,500 published controlled clinical trials in peer-reviewed journals in multiple different languages all over the world. And motivational interviewing, although it started in the field of substance use, it's now being used effectively in lots of different applications, and maybe even some that you might be surprised by. In fact, research shows motivational interviewing is effective in supporting people in making behavior change in settings like prison and in probation and parole, so in a correction setting, in a law enforcement setting. Also in education, from kindergarten to 12th grade, in higher education, like undergraduate, not only in an educational setting, but also in student support services, in law school, business school, other professional schools, in healthcare settings where doctors and nurses and other support staff, famously only have 1 or 2 minutes with people sometimes. Motivational interviewing can be a way to connect very quickly and affect behavior change very quickly, even in those rapid pace settings. It started in substance use, but it's also being used in mental health counseling in all sorts of settings: outpatient, inpatient, residential, with all age groups, with mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, trauma, eating disorders. So lots of different applications of this work. And then even in sports, where professional sports coaches are now finding that motivational interviewing can be an effective tool in supporting athletes in better achieving their goals, versus the old approach of maybe yelling at someone or making them run laps if they don't play hard enough, right? Other things we know from the research is that empathy is critical. So compassion, empathy, connecting. It's not so much what you do, but how you do it, how you connect with people. In fact, research shows that you can take a PhD level licensed clinician, and if they're low in empathy, they're actually less effective in supporting behavior change than a self-help book. So, this idea of connecting with your clients and really caring about what they're feeling and what their experience is critically important. Also, anybody can learn motivational interviewing. Got a PhD? Great. Got a GED? Great. You can learn motivational interviewing. You can learn to do it really well. And it's something that can be effective in really brief amounts of time. Now, I use motivational interviewing with clients that I've been seeing for 6, 7, 8 years. And in some of my interactions, I can have 15 minutes with somebody and really help to move them from where they are closer to where they want to be. And it's not, like I said, a different type of therapy. Instead, it's a way of doing whatever it is you do. You can answer the phone, motivational interviewing. You can greet people at your clinic using motivational interviewing. And if you are doing therapy, then it can make other evidence-based practices more effective. So if you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy is an evidence-based practice, so it's going to work. If you do it in the style of motivational interviewing, it will be even more effective. Okay. Other things that we know from the research is that motivational interviewing can be highly effective with folks who hold historically marginalized identities. This is not just an intervention that's been researched, like a lot of behavioral health interventions, with just college-age students at predominantly white institutions. It's been researched across the world with lots of different folks holding different identities. Also, it's highly effective in clients who have low motivation to change or are maybe highly angry or resistant, which is really good news for you if you're working with folks who are adolescents, right? Because sometimes our clients who are adolescents are not super enthusiastic about working with us, or this idea of, oh, this person is hoping that I make a change. Their need for being in control and exercising their autonomy is really strong, and sometimes that can come through in the form of feeling like resistance. This is a technique that can be really effective in those settings. Also, motivational interviewing tends to increase treatment recommendation adherence. So again, adolescents don't love to do what we ask them to do. Motivational interviewing increases the likelihood that they're going to follow through, because again, they're the ones who need to make the changes. We can't follow them home and make the changes for them. Another wonderful aspect of motivational interviewing is it's a way of reframing the work that you do as a helper, and through that, it reduces your burnout. It reduces your frustration. It reduces your fatigue, because it recalibrates the way you think about your role as a helper. And then ultimately, the folks who receive motivational interviewing style interventions tend to report better overall health outcomes. So it just globally improves people's outcomes if you're doing it right. So many positive aspects of using motivational interviewing, which is part of why I love it so much and why I'm here sharing it with you today. I want to invite you to participate in an exercise just for yourself, not something you're going to have to share out loud, but I want to invite you to think about something in your life that you want to change, something that you haven't started doing yet, or you want to start doing, or you're doing it too much and you want to stop doing it, or something you want to change doing. And if you're like me, a human, you probably got a whole list of things that you want to change. But for this purpose, just think of one thing that you want to change in your life, okay? And when you've got that thing in your mind, pick that one thing you want to change, put your hand up. And I want you to keep your hand up as long as what I'm saying applies to you, okay? Keep your hand up if this thing you want to change and you're thinking about, if you can think of one or more reasons that you want to make that change. All right? Keep your hand up if you can think of one or more reasons that you haven't yet made that change. Keep your hand up if you have the information or know where to get the information on how to make that change. All right, now keep that hand up if you've wanted to make this change for more than a day. Keep your hand up if you've wanted to make this change for more than a week. Keep your hand up if you want to make this change for more than a month. And keep your hand up if you've wanted to make this change for over a year. All right, you did great. You can put your hand down and shake it out. So what I want you to invite you to do now is think about what feelings came up for you as I was asking you those questions. So you were thinking about that thing you want to change and you haven't changed yet. You've got the information. You've wanted to change this thing for a while now, and yet you haven't. What feelings came up? Oftentimes when I ask this question, the answers I get are answers like feelings of shame, or guilt, or frustration. Other people say, actually, I feel kind of ready to go. Like, what am I waiting for? So there is an aspect of being invited to think about it that is helpful. Just pause and think about it. Because so oftentimes we're so busy we don't even stop to think. But there's something about it that makes us feel like, man, I want to be somewhere different, but I'm not. And change is hard. It's hard for all of us. And what I want to invite you to do now is think, how might this exercise and what you're feeling now help us to think about how we work with our clients who may be not where we want them to be, but also not where they want to be. Maybe they want to be in a different place, but they haven't made that change yet. Just like you. Maybe cultivates a little bit of empathy. What it also brings up is an important concept in thinking about behavior change, and that's ambivalence. Ambivalence is not the same thing as apathy. Ambivalence is feeling this way and this way at the same time. So no matter what your goal was, I know that it had a but, right? I want to exercise more, but I can't find the time. I want to stop smoking, but it's what I use to manage my stress. I want to eat better, but healthy food's expensive, right? I want to get more organized, but every time I try, I can't follow through with it. So everything has a but. Everything has this one side and the other side. And so one thing is, when your clients are acknowledging that they've got those two sides to it, all that indicates is that they're normal and that they trust you. So don't wrestle with that when they share with you the but, because they're already feeling some shame about it. They're already feeling some frustration about not being where they want to be. And when we explore that ambivalence and from a place of non-judgment, what ends up winning out when you compare your hopes and dreams, what you really want, what's really important to you, what makes you tick, to, I'm not sure if I can, I'm worried about it, those hopes and dreams always win out. So exploring ambivalence can be helpful for people to help resolve that ambivalence and get them moving towards, you know what, this is really what I want. So just hold that as we continue to talk about behavior change. While we're talking about change, let's talk a little bit about the research behind change and what we know about behavior change. So there's a ton of research around behavior change, and a lot of this work was started by two researchers, Prochaska and DiClemente, back in the 80s, and they developed what's called the trans-theoretical model of change. And out of that work came something known as the stages of change, which many of you may be familiar with. The stages of change are these: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. In plain language, what those mean are pre-contemplation is sort of this, nah, I don't have a problem. I'm good. I don't need to change. Any of your clients feel that way? Yeah, I bet. But they're pre-thinking about it, right? They're pre-contemplating making a change. They're not there yet. Contemplation is they're thinking about it. They're contemplating making a change. Yeah, okay, so things could be better. They haven't done anything about it yet, but they're thinking about it. Preparation is I've decided to make a change, and now I'm thinking about how. I'm making a plan. Action is when people are actually doing it. They're taking steps towards making that change. I threw away my last pack of cigarettes and I bought a pack of Nicorette gum. Okay, that's action. And then maintenance is recognizing that even after you've changed, it takes effort to continue staying changed. So great, you went for a jog yesterday. Before we call you a runner, let's make sure that you show up and run again, maybe today or tomorrow. Okay. And if you notice, as someone moves from pre-contemplation through these things, because we really want our clients to be in action, right? That's the ideal, is we want them to be in action and then in maintenance. We want to help move them through this. Then what's changing is an increase in motivation. So our job as helpers is really to help increase someone's motivation, so that they can think about it, so that then they can start planning, so then they can start doing, and then they can start maintaining. Okay. So out of this work of Prochaska and DiClemente and all of the subsequent researchers that came, we know a lot of things about change. So let's just tap into a few of those things that we know from the literature. First of all, change happens naturally. So the folks that you work with are going to be different tomorrow than they were today. They're going to be different in a month. They're going to be even more different in a year. But the ways in which they change really seems to be influenced by the people that they interact with, and that includes you. And the types of interactions that tend to result in meaningful and lasting change are compassionate and positive interactions. So it's not so much about reward. It's not so much about punishment. It's about connection. Okay? That's what tends to lead to meaningful, lasting change. Another key aspect from the literature around change is that how people feel about themselves as a change agent matters. So people who believe that they can be successful are more likely to try. So part of your job as a helper is to help your clients believe in themselves. So when we, pile on that shame or guilt that our clients feel about not being where they want to be, it actually defeats our efforts, because then they feel like a loser. They feel more stuck. They don't feel like they can. We want our clients to feel like they can, to believe in themselves. We hold out hope for them until they can believe in themselves. And then what people say about change, the language they use is important. In fact, the language that people use about change is predictive of whether or not they're going to do it. And then finally, as we've seen, motivation is fundamental to change. And that's why in motivational interviewing, we're focused on building motivation. Because if someone's motivated, then they will do it. I want to invite you again to go inside your own experience, and I want you to think about someone who, for you, has been a helpful helper in your life, someone who helped you grow or achieve a goal or be a better version of yourself and really made you feel seen and heard. And hopefully you've had lots of people in your life that fit that description, but for this purpose, just pick one and lock them in your brain. And as you're thinking about that person, I want to ask you to think about what are one or two words that describe that person's way of being with you? How did they show up? What was their way of being with you? And just think about what two words would you use to describe that person's way of being with you, and maybe jot them down. And oftentimes the kinds of words that I hear when I ask people this question are things like, well, they were patient. They were non-judgmental. They were kind. They believed in me. They were supportive. They showed care, right? They were focused on me. They really listened. Does it match some of your words? And I want to invite you, just the same person, a little tweak on the question. What are one or two words that describe the way that person made you feel? Just one or two words, the way you felt as that person was being a helper for you. And sometimes the types of words I hear in this one are, I felt heard, I felt seen, I felt supported, I felt validated, I felt encouraged, I felt like they believed in me. So as we put together these words and these pictures, we know what it looks like, what it feels like for someone to be a helpful helper for us. And that's why we're doing this work. That's what you want to be for your clients, right? When I ask your clients in a future training, who's somebody who made you feel this way, you're going to want them to think of you. And so I'll ask you, do you think your clients describe you in those ways? Do you show up for them in those ways? Do you leave them feeling those ways? Dr. Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And for all of you, that's true of this helper that you had at some point in your life. And that's what we want to do for our clients. And it turns out this is borne out in the research that it is more about the way a helper shows up for someone than what they do or what they say. It is the way of being that is critically important. And we've just developed a list of words that describe the ways in which a helpful helper show up. In motivational interviewing, that way of being is described as the spirit of motivational interviewing. And this is evidence-based that helpers who hold these traits in their role as a helper tend to have clients who have better outcomes. Before I share with you what the components of the spirit of motivational interviewing are, I want to bring your attention to this image of a tree. And this tree for me is a metaphor for the helping relationship between you and your client. And in order for that helping relationship to grow big and strong and leaf out and bear fruit, it's got to have a robust root system. That root system becomes the delivery process for the nutrients and the structure and the foundation to hold that tree upright so that when the weather gets rocky and things get rough, it doesn't topple over. And that's what we want from our helping relationships with our client. We want them to be strong and robust and to weather storms. And so the spirit of MI, this way of showing up for our clients, helps us to do that. And there are 4 components to the spirit of motivational interviewing. And those are compassion, acceptance, partnership, and empowerment. So compassion, truly seeking to understand your client's experience, what's important to them, what matters to them, how they feel, and wanting that to be better for them, right? And it takes curiosity, it takes leaning in, it takes seeking to understand. Acceptance is non-judgment, recognizing and accepting that people are not necessarily where you want them to be, and they're not necessarily where they want to be. And that change is hard. Accepting that they have choice and autonomy, even if there are consequences for those choices, they have choice. That people may have different values than you, different motivations, and that's okay. You can still be helpful. Acceptance is not the same thing as approval. And accepting that everybody has strengths, everybody is motivated for something. Even if it doesn't look like it on the outside, everybody is motivated for some fundamental human needs: connection, safety, control, right? Partnership is in contrast to this idea that I'm the expert with all the answers and I'm here to fix your problems. That's not how it works. That results in frustration from both sides. Partnership instead is coming alongside and saying, how can we figure this out together? Because your clients are experts in their own lives. They know what's going to work. They've got ideas. They've tried things before. And you are the person with a degree and a title and experience and resources. And what a beautiful partnership that makes. And then finally, empowerment. Going back to that, people who believe they can will. So part of your job as a helper is to build people up and hold out for hope for them until they can believe in themselves. If they're at a place of it's not possible and you're at a place of I know better is possible for you, then maybe, just maybe, they'll meet you in the middle at it's worth a try, right? So part of our job is to recognize their strength, recognize their past successes, okay? Recognize their victories, no matter how small they are, and celebrate them. Now, if acronyms are helpful for you in memorizing things, notice that this spells CAPE. That's a reminder to me my job is not to put on my superhero cape and swoop in and rescue someone from their problems. Similarly, if you scramble it, it spells PACE, which reminds me to slow down and meet people where they are, to not rush them, to not push them or pull them. Because when you push people, they push back. Another aspect of this way of being is a way to not be. And we call this the fixing reflex. And I know all of you have this fixing reflex because you're helpers. You signed up for hard jobs to help support people in making behavior change. And if you wanted an easier job, you could have just sold something. I don't know. But you chose a hard job because having an impact on people matters, because people's suffering is hard for you and you want to make it better. But what the fixing reflex draws us into is looking for the problems and then trying to fix them. And when we do that, people feel like we see them as a problem, and people feel like we think they're dumb and don't know anything. And we're just saying, oh, all you have to do is this. It's like minimizing their problems. And that unsolicited advice and fixing it feels like criticism. Think about times that you've been venting to someone and they say, oh, all you need to do is what you should do is, it feels critical. It's the junk mail of life. I didn't ask for that. I wanted you to listen, not fix it. And people, including your adolescent clients, generally have some ideas. They know things to do. They can Google, right? All of you, when I asked you about that thing you want to change in your life, all of you knew something about how to go about making the change, and yet you hadn't. Information alone doesn't make change. It's about motivation. And so your clients will have ideas. They'll definitely know what won't work for them. And they'll have ideas of things other people have tried that they haven't tried yet, right? So all I'm saying is, when you notice that urge to fix bubble up, just push it back down a little bit. And instead, invite them to do the talking. Invite them to be an active participant in problem solving, instead of you giving them a passive role by just being a fixer. And I recognize that you as a helper do have important information. You've got training and resources, like I said. But if you want to deliver that in a way that is going to be received, we've got a strategy for that. And this framework we call ask, offer, ask. So the way that you make information palatable, especially for adolescents who don't like being lectured at, is say, hey, would it be okay if I gave you some ideas? Would it be okay if I shared some resources with you? Now you're in partnership, because they're going to say yes 90% of the time. Yeah, you can share that with me. Okay, here's the information I have to provide. And then the second ask is, so what do you think? Which signals to them, I recognize this may work for you or it may not work for you. I think it'll work. It's worked for other people, but I don't know if it's going to work for you. And I'd like to hear that from you. I honor your autonomy because I'd rather know whether or not my client feels like they're going to follow through with it rather than them politely saying, yeah, okay, whatever, right? And knowing they're not going to go out and do it. So asking permission sort of makes that information palatable. And then that second ask of what do you think, it invites them into an honest dialogue about, will this work for you? And if not, maybe they have some other ideas. All right. The fixing reflex, because the outcomes for our clients matter, it makes us want to push our clients to convince them, you got to do this. The problem is when we try to convince people and push them, we've got this natural psychological mechanism called psychological reactance, where even if we agree, we push back. Humans are stubborn. It's a protective function because being in control is so critical to survival. It's hardwired in us. So when you're saying to your client, your client is thinking, oh yeah, watch me, especially our adolescent clients. So it's this counterintuitive thing that when you push them, when you pull them, they're pushing back, they're pulling back. And we don't want our clients to be passive recipients of our guidance. We need them to develop an intrinsic motivation because they're the doers. So we need them, after they're done meeting with us, to go into their life and want to make this change. So doing it for us is just an unrealistic motivation. They need to want it for themselves. So that's a different strategy. Miller and Rolnick describe motivational interviewing when you're doing it well as dancing with your client and not wrestling with your client. When you start feeling like you're wrestling with your client, it's because you're trying to fix them. So pause and go back to connecting with them. Find out where they are. Be curious. Okay. All right. So in motivational interviewing, we have a set of tools that we know by an acronym OARS. OARS stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. These are the tools we use to deliver motivational interviewing. It's how we listen to people. Okay. Starting with open-ended questions. So I know you know what an open-ended question is. And even more than it being open-ended, I'm interested in your questions being open-minded. This is how you demonstrate your curiosity. This is how you lean in and get curious. This is how you cultivate that compassion by getting information about your client's experience. Open-ended questions are questions that aren't just your demographic sheets. How old are you? What's your name? What's your age? What kind of insurance do you have? Right? It's also not rhetorical questions or questions where we already know the answer. Like, don't you want? Nope. Cancel that one. Don't ask those questions. And the key is, it's really us as the interviewer handing our client the microphone and saying, I'm interested in your perspective, right? And they will lead us to the places that are relevant and interesting. And finally, like I said, it's where we create the foundation. It's where we show our curiosity, where we get information, and that understanding that comes from that is how we can cultivate that compassion and that connection with our clients. Affirmations are simply a switch on the deficit seeking that the fixing reflex does. And instead of looking for deficits, look for what's right in your clients. Put on your strength finder lenses and look for the strengths in your clients. Look for their wins. And when you see them, name them. Wow, you're the type of person who, when you set your mind to something, you really follow through. Affirmation, right? Oh, wow, you've got a lot going on, and yet you found a way to show up here today. Your health must be really important to you. Okay. And a few things about affirmations. Number one, they have to be genuine. They're powerful, but if you're faking it, your client will know. They can sniff it out, and it'll do damage to that connection and safety. Also, It's not just a compliment, but it's something about an internal trait in your client. So it's not, wow, those are great shoes, but it might be, oh, the way you show up in a space really matters to you, right? And then finally, the benefit of affirmations is that in the empowerment piece. It helps them to see themselves through your eyes as someone who has strengths, someone who has achieved, and that can shift the way they see themselves. Reflections are the most powerful tool, the most important, and should be the most frequent tool used in effective motivational interviewing. Reflections are simply statements by you, the worker, the listener, back to your client to reflect back like a mirror what they're saying. Now, let me give you some examples. So a client of yours says, yeah, that school was always trying to kick me out. Reflections can be very simple and literally mirror back what they just said. They wanted you out. Or they can sort of rephrase it, not with the exact same words, but yeah, they were trying to get rid of you. Or yeah, that was their goal. Okay. Can you see how, as I'm echoing these things back to this client, this kid is knowing that I'm listening, that I care, and that I'm hearing him. Okay. And that builds connection, that builds safety. You can get even deeper with your reflections, more complex with them, by seeking to reflect back, what's the feeling here? Or what are they trying to tell me? So that school is always trying to kick me out. Yeah, you're feeling targeted. Or the meaning behind it, that school is always trying to kick me out. Yeah, you never felt like you had a fair chance. Here's some other examples. A client says, yeah, I know I should smoke less, but my anxiety would just spiral. So hear that both and? It's ambivalence, right? So we can use something called a double-sided reflection to reflect back both sides of the ambivalence. It would sound something like, so on one hand, weed is what you use to manage anxiety, but on the other hand, it's causing you problems and you'd like to cut back. And notice the order of that. When we offer a reflection, what we do is we put a period at the end and a space. And our clients are likely going to build on it. They're going to say, yeah. And with this one, they're going to build on whatever you leave them with, which is, but on the other hand, it's causing you problems and you'd like to cut back. Yeah, I mean, I keep getting in trouble. And yeah, my mom's all over my case about it too. She says it's going to make me dumb or something, right? If we did it the other way around, then listen to what happens. So yeah, on the one hand, weed's causing you problems and you'd like to cut back, but on the other hand, it's what you use to manage your anxiety. What you leave them with, they're going to build on. So then this kid's going to say, yeah, I mean, I don't know how I'd get through a day if I couldn't smoke. Right? They're talking themselves into it. So the order of that matters, but this is how we can exert our influence on the conversation, is by choosing what we choose to reflect back. We don't have to reflect everything, just the things that would be helpful to reflect back. And then finally, another type of reflection is a reflection of what we call change talk, the language about wanting to change. So just zeroing in on that part, this kid says, I know I should smoke less, but my anxiety would just spiral. Oh, so you're ready to find healthier ways to manage your anxiety. Can you see how that could be helpful for your client to hear back? When you're listening, to listen reflectively, to actively participate in the conversation by reflecting back, here's some tips. Listen for, what is this person feeling? When you have an answer, say it back. Right? You're feeling overwhelmed. You're feeling frustrated. Ask yourself, what are they trying to help me understand? What's the key point? Oh, so this is really important to you. Oh, this is something that you don't want to keep happening. And remember, leave a space and pause, because that gives them a chance to chew on it and say, is that right? And whether it is or not, don't worry about getting it wrong, because they're going to either say, yeah, and give you more information, or they're going to say, no, it's more like this. And they're going to have to give you a clearer explanation, which also helps them understand their stance on it, right? So leave that space. Don't rush it. And reflections are statements. They're not questions. Okay, so they should have a period at the end. Ideally, they're brief. So you're not taking back the microphone and giving your opinion on something. Instead, you're just actively participating, letting your client know I'm here with you, I'm listening, it matters to me, I'm picking up what you're putting down. There's a benefit to saying things out loud, and there's an added benefit to hearing it back from somebody else. That mirror really amplifies things for people and really makes it stick. And it shows you as a helper are really interested and care. And so often our adolescent clients don't feel like adults care, right? They feel dismissed, they feel judged. And this is a way to counteract that. Our final tool in our toolkit of OARs is a summary. And notice this picture of a bouquet. So I think of it as a summary is we've been on this journey together in this conversation. I've been picking the pretty parts that stand out to me. And here you go. You can have those back. And in that summary, I'm handing you back sort of the big picture. Hey, I've been listening to you and I've been connecting the dots. And here's some of the themes that I've been hearing. Here's some of the connections that I've been making. And I'm offering that back to you to really show that I've been listening. And also, I think it might be helpful for you to hear that. I'm not giving you back everything, just the key things that will be helpful for them to hear back, like your motivations, your values, what you're excited about, your why for making this change. And then if I got something wrong, it gives you an opportunity to say, it wasn't quite like this, it's more like this. And then we understand each other better. And also, a summary can be an incredible tactical tool to create a bridge or transition. So imagine you're in a conversation with a client and you've got a time limit and you're feeling that pressure, but they're going and you don't want to interrupt them. What if you say, oh, wait, hold on one second. Hold on. Let me see if I've got this. So yeah, school's been a major burden for you and you just feel like you keep getting in trouble and everybody's out to get you. And so you'd like to figure out ways to like reduce some of that conflict at school. Then I heard you thinking about rejoining the football team next year, that it didn't work out, but you're wondering maybe you should go talk to the coach or do something because it's something that as you've sort of been out of it, you really want to get back into. And then you were talking about your conflict with your parents and you just sort of at a loss and how to talk to them. And then you mentioned your weed use and how that keeps getting you in trouble. And so I'm curious, in the 10 minutes that we have left, if we were to pick one of those to really focus in on, so you have something concrete to leave here with, which one of those feels like you'd like to really focus in on? You see how I'm creating a transition. I'm indicating we have a limited amount of time. I'm inviting them to focus in on one piece of that so that we can have a practical solution at the end of the session. But also I'm letting them know I heard you and all that stuff's important. And it's up to you. I honor your autonomy. You get to choose where we go next. So another core chunk of the content in motivational interviewing is something we call the 4 tasks of MI. And I think of the 4 tasks as the roadmap of a helping conversation. It starts with engaging. So engaging is the foundation. And this is where we really build trust and connection with our clients. Okay. And the reason that we do this first and why this is the foundation and we don't do anything until then is because there is a benefit to creating that engagement and that connection and that safety with our clients. And that is that all of our clients are scared to some degree. They feel unsure to some degree. They are in protection mode to some degree, which means their amygdala is activated. That's your protection, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And when a client's amygdala is activated, they're not sure if they can trust you. They're in defense mode. And when your amygdala is on, the rest of your brain is off. So you can't do your hoping and dreaming and thinking and problem solving. So connecting, which means connecting with your client as a whole person, not just a problem, not just a diagnosis. It's not what's the matter with you, it's what matters to you. This is also where you answer those inevitable questions that they're wondering, like, who is this person? Do they even care about me? How long are we meeting? What's the deal with this thing? What does a service even mean? How much of what I say is going to get back to someone else versus private or confidential? Answer those questions as you settle in with someone. And if you like a rule of thumb, spend 20%, okay? 1/5 of your time. So that means if you have an hour with somebody, 12 minutes of that is just put your clipboard aside, no assessments, no laptop, just connecting. Okay. And then that investment in that connection, that will make the rest of your work so much more efficient, so much more effective. Once you're connected, now you got to find a what. What are we working on? Don't assume just because you're a substance use provider that the what is substance use. That may be a non-starter for your client. I'm not talking about my weed use. Back off, man. Right? The key here is finding the overlap, that magic overlap, what's important to them and what's important to you. So maybe it's not weed use, but maybe it is being on the sports team. I'm not nagging you about your weed use. I know you want to play football. How are you going to get there? Seems like coach isn't cool with weed use. So how are we going to resolve that? Right? It all becomes about making the team. But finding a what, because we can't solve all the problems. Like that example with the summary. You can't eat an elephant all in one bite. You got to break it down to little bite-sized pieces. Once you've got a what, your fixing reflex is going to want you to jump up to, now how are you going to get that done? But the magic of motivational interviewing comes in this next task, evoking, building the motivation by exploring their why, getting them excited. Because this is where we fan that spark of what they want to do into the flame of, wow, I really want this. Because that's the difference between them being motivated to do it and not. And the way we know they're getting motivated is when they're talking about their why, they're using what we call change talk. So change talk is this powerful language that actually predicts the likelihood of change. And it's just your client's language about why they want to make a change or why they don't want to stay the same. And what happens here is they end up making their own argument for change instead of you making the argument for the client. And the way you can get change talk is ask them questions like, what are some reasons you're thinking about making this change? What would your future look like if you made this change? What are you afraid might happen if you don't make this change? What are the good things about making the change? What are the bad things about not making a change? Connecting what they want or this target to their hopes and dreams and goals and what's important to them and who they really want to be. As they hear themselves cultivating that change talk, as you go fishing for it with your open-ended questions, then amplify it back whenever you hear it. And that's going to make it louder for them. They're going to hear that, and you can amplify both their why and their how, and it's going to really lock it in for them. It's going to make it feel even more real hearing it back from you, hearing themselves say it out loud, but then hearing it back from you. That's the power of that reflective listening. So affirmations, reflections, and summaries all let someone hear it back from you. And then finally, once you've got that fire burning, now it's time to plan. And I know you know how to plan. It's the how. How are we going to go about this? And the first thing is make sure you haven't rushed it. Okay, because they're going to feel overwhelmed if you jump right to planning without building up that momentum and that motivation. But once you do, get really, really specific, really, really detailed with the plan. If you don't know what they're going to do to be successful, then they don't either. So it needs to be a super detailed plan. Who, what, when, where, how often, when are you going to start, all that. What tools do you need? Who are you going to tell about this? Once they've got a super detailed plan, have them say it back to you. And then ask them how confident they feel that they're going to be able to do it. If it's above a 7, cool. Celebrate them, send them out. They're going to do it. If it's a low confidence rating, then break that plan down into smaller bits. Make it a smaller leap. Okay? Don't send them out prepared for failure with a hard goal that they don't feel like they can do. Okay? And then make a date to follow up with permission, because knowing you're out there and that you care and you're going to follow up matters. It makes a difference. Okay. So that was brief. That was a lot. And hopefully what we've done here is sort of piqued your interest in learning more and really developing your expertise. Even if you've had motivational interviewing training in the past, really getting back and honing those skills. So here's what we know from the research about how people learn motivational interviewing. One thing is that something like this quick, or watching a video, or just reading the MI book, they're great places to start, get a sense of what it is, but it doesn't really teach you how to do it. So What you want to find is a live motivational interviewing training, Zoom or in person, either way, but live, and you tend to get some pretty good skill gains. But research shows that if you don't intentionally practice that, then what you learn is going to fade within 6 months as if you never had that training at all. So it's really, you got to have that intentional practice. Some of you may have had past MI training and you know that, right? Maybe those skills have sort of evaporated. You got to practice. And the specific types of practice that tend to translate not only into excellent practice, but outcomes for your clients, according to the research, are getting feedback and coaching based on recordings or observed practice from somebody who's an expert. So looking for someone who is an expert, ideally someone who's in the motivational interviewing network of trainers or MINT, who can listen to you delivering motivational interviewing and then provide you with coaching and feedback and let you listen to it back. That's where growth really happens. Another thing to keep in mind is that with motivational interviewing, false confidence is common. And that's because a lot of these concepts are pretty regular concepts. It seems kind of obvious. And that's a little bit of a trap. Motivational interviewing is pretty simple conceptually, and it's not simple to learn. So I'm not saying this to discourage you, but instead to say you really do need to practice. And a lot of folks, if you ask them, are you good at MI? Oh yeah, do that. And then we observe it and not quite. So it does take practice. It's sort of like learning a language. You got to really practice it to develop that fluency. So if you want to learn more, find a training that's, I'd say 10 hours or more. For an introductory training. The state has some service definition requirements that are 13-hour training, so maybe some of you have had that. And then find ways to get that follow-up and coaching and coding and feedback, okay? That's how you're going to learn more. In the meantime, some ways that you can do some self-study, starting with the MINT website, motivationalinterviewing.org, is a great place to find trainers and trainings. If you get the book, make sure it's the 4th edition, because the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd editions were great, but they've been improved based on research and practice. Be careful looking for MI videos on YouTube. There's some good stuff, some not so good stuff, but psychotherapy.net and psychwire.com both have really great collections of motivational interviewing videos and resources. And then the British Medical Journal, BMJ, they have a free MI webinar for health professionals that you can take at your own pace. And then finally, if you're into podcasts, Motivational Interviewing and Beyond is a live webinar about monthly where you can be in the audience and ask questions. They turn the audio into a podcast. And then Talking to Change is an exceptional podcast where the hosts invite in experts who talk about applying motivational interviewing in different settings, including with children and adolescents, with families, in inpatient settings, with folks suffering from psychotic disorders or homelessness. So lots of different really contextualized exploration of motivational interviewing. So that's it for me. If you would like to ask some questions or I could be of help, please feel free to reach out to me at my email, prives@gmail.com, or at my website, peterreeves.com. And hopefully I'll be able to take a few questions here in just a little bit. So thanks so much for your time. Thanks for what you do. And I hope this was helpful. Hi, everyone, and welcome.
We're so appreciative to Peter for pre-recording with us several weeks ago and all your preparation, Peter, and really thinking about MI from the adolescent serving perspective. We had a few questions come in. I think you really answered them through the presentation. A lot of them were about resources and folks thinking about different levels of training. You mentioned like that kind of that baseline being the 10 hours, but there are other kind of intensities and durations of the training that you offer and that are offered out there in MI. Can you talk a little bit about the different levels in terms of, how many days could training last? What does that look like versus a 2-day training? And then also, we have another question to follow up to that is, what are some of your favorite resources for fidelity? I think you've answered a lot of that, but maybe just making a plug for one or two live on camera would be great. Good to see you on video and love your background.
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. Great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks everybody for tuning in. So in terms of additional training, it really varies, but I just want to drive home the main idea is that those live experiential trainings, and it can be on Zoom, it can be in person, but getting into a training where you're not just listening to someone like you just did, but instead having more of an experiential, practice-oriented training opportunity. And obviously, the more time, the better. So balancing that with the demands that you have. 2 days is sort of a standard intro, and then from there, getting into a 2 or 3 day intermediate and advanced style trainings. But it's really that coding, coaching, and feedback piece that tends to translate into meaningful skill change that translates into client behavior change. And then fidelity, the best thing, it's one of those things where I think it's really hard for folks who are not experts in motivational interviewing to be able to self-monitor. And so it's something where you really got to get somebody who knows what they're doing to give you that feedback. It's hard to have a self-rating scale that can meet that need. Any other questions that I can answer?
We had a great question just come in about kind of three different trainees. There's this third that are able to adopt MI easily in practice. And then some with some effort, they can make some progress and adopt some of that. And there's some where it just doesn't work as well. What are your thoughts about that? And is it a skill set that everyone can master, or is it good for just some? What do you think?
Well, the research is clear that who can learn motivational interviewing well and do it well is unrelated to your educational background. It's unrelated to the degrees or the licensure you have. Anybody can learn it. So that's really good news for all of us. And for some of us, it comes more naturally. Some of us are naturally active and reflective listeners, right? Some of us have some bad habits that get in the way. So yeah, I think that's why that feedback is such a critical piece. Is not only does it help you to hear yourself, but then you're getting feedback on what might not be clear to you because it comes so naturally to you.
Excellent response. We were at time. We're going to wrap up, but we've had some questions come in about a lot of the slides that you had and resources, and want to make folks aware again that the slides are already available through EADS. If you have any trouble accessing those, you can contact me after the conference. But we appreciate you, Peter, recording with us and then being on here live as well and kind of doing double duty. We're just glad to have you in the quarter.
Thank you, the Governance Institute. Appreciate it.